One, two, three, the lawn feed. Welcome to another episode of the Lawn Feed podcast. Collectively, the Lawn Feed is three dads with a strong passion for lawn care. We deliver everything lawn care to you in a simplified, easy to listen to way. In a space where all experience levels are welcome, egos are left at the door, successes are celebrated, and there are no failures, only learning moments. I am Andrew, the Dad Bod Lawn, and with me is Chris, Opitz Mowtime.
Hello.
And Vince is juggling some much needed projects at home, timely projects. He's having some issues going on, so
Got some leaking issues in the basement.
yeah. He's got a wet basement, so we'll let him off
Whatever
the hook
that
tonight.
means.
Yeah, I we'll just trust him that he's got a leaking basement going on.
He's having a great night.
On this episode, we will be discussing spring projects that we plan to be doing, along with our first ever Mowtime mailbag segment, where we answer questions submitted by you, the listener. But first, let's thank our sponsor.
Let's do that. Let's give a shout out to our friends over at Twin City Seed for powering this episode and season of the Lawn Feed podcast. They are built on the reputation of superior service, accuracy, and sustainability with custom blending and packaging, high performance product, and a team of people and dedicated experts. Twin City Seed is a North American leader for giving us DIYers the highest quality of premium and elite grass seed for your next project, whatever that might be. Save money on your grass seed by using promo code LawnFeed10 to save 10% on your next order. And on top of that, receive free shipping by pairing that promo code FREESHIP24. Twin City Seed proudly serves all of North America. Check them out at twincityseed.com. And for the folks up north in Canada, twincityseed.ca.
And it is seeding season, which we will be talking about a little bit here in this episode with our projects we got coming up. So it's a great time to head on over there and utilize the 10% off and the free shipping code.
Yeah, it is.
But before we get into that, we gotta do some dads, wins, and losses. And this segment is sponsored by WaySafe Trailer Hitches. WaySafe has the only trailer hitches on the market with built-in scales to measure tongue weight to ensure the safest towing experience possible to keep you and your family safe while towing. Use code TLF15 at checkout for 15% off your order at way-safe.com.
A lawn feed tradition where we tap into who we are at heart. Dads! This is Dad's Wins and Losses, where we tap into our inner dad bod father figures and highlight some of the recent wins we've experienced as parents, and of course, vent about the embarrassing losses we take each and every day as dads.
I love you, Daddy.
There it is.
There it is.
Chris, why don't you go ahead and take it tonight, bud? I feel like you're due for a couple. I think Vince is actually due, but he's not here, so
He's definitely due, and I feel like he's dealing with a couple losses tonight for sure. But
we'll hear about
those. Definitely for the next one. So the last time we heard wins and losses from one of us three, it was from you coming back off of a vacation for spring break. And I'm going to follow that up with really what we did. And there are a ton of wins. From what I thought, there would be a ton of losses. We took the venture and decided to just take the risk and go out to Hawaii. And when I say risk, there is no risk. It's just a really freaking long flight, especially for a 5-year-old, which we were most concerned with. So we did the thing, which was fine. But the kids, like every time I turn the corner to expect like a glaring loss, there was no losses. Every single part of that trip was a huge win, and it wasn't necessarily the flight out there that we were worried about. It was kind of the flight back. But I forgot the flights back are like you fly out at 9 p.m. Hawaiian time, and it's like kind of a red eye situation. So it actually went like really well. Like the kids slept, everyone slept. It was like the whole plane slept on the way back, and we just had 7 full days of a bunch of wins. The kids were completely conked. They swam in the ocean for the first time. They went whale watching. It was just a bunch of like firsts for them. And like to experience a different culture was something we were really pumped up about. And we're obviously here in the US, but like Hawaii is its own like country, right? Like it's in the US, but it's totally different. And we were right south of like Lahaina, where all of the fires were and all of that stuff. And when we were going up to like whale watching and stuff, we had to like bypass Lahaina, and we got to see all the devastation of all of, what happened out there. And it was just a lot in 1 week of like first, because like the kids saw all that on the news, then they saw it kind of firsthand, they asked questions, we obviously were prepared and had all of that ready for them and stuff. And so like that part was like, that part hit pretty close, but like at the same time it was really good to have them just like go out and experience things for really the first time ever. And for us as parents, just kind of sitting back and having fun watching all of that stuff and not having to deal with any of the losses, which was pretty cool. So it's a lot of win. And I think you were the same way. It was like we were expecting the whole entire trip to just be like this like complete crapshoot, and it wasn't. I think the week after it was, for sure. Everyone was thrown off of their routine, but spring break was cool, man. It was fun. Highly recommend getting the heck out with the kids and giving, if you can, giving them a whatever it is, road trip, caravan somewhere, get the whole family going and go experience a whole week worth of firsts and making a whole week out of it. So yeah, man, it was fun.
That's awesome. Hawaii, that's quite the commitment for a vacation.
Yes.
Florida is kind of like the typical, Midwestern spring break vacation, or, somewhere down in the Panhandle area. So kudos to you guys for taking that, slight risk of going all the way out there. That's on the bucket list. So I think we're gonna wait for the kids to be a little bit older, or possibly go without the kids even. So
it's fun. And yeah, we did it. We did the whole Hawaii thing without the kids first, and then went with the kids to kind of a familiar place that we were, used to or whatever. But
yeah, so you got a chance to enjoy it first, and then then you can focus on making the best experience for the kids this time around.
Yeah, man. It's cool. The culture over there is awesome. I don't know if I could live there, but I can certainly spend months there. That's for sure. If money wasn't the thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's fun, dude. It's
you
fun.
got a loss?
I don't think so. The week after was a shit show.
Yeah.
The week after was just like throwing crap at a wall and seeing what sticks for all of us. Like it was like all of the routines were gone. So that part kind of sucked, but like the wins heavily outweighed any of that, from all the experiences. So honestly, I don't, which is rare.
You know what? It's a good thing.
On my side.
If you got to think that hard about it and you can't pinpoint something, then everything must be pretty minor. So wins all around. Cool, man. Appreciate you sharing all that. We recently wrapped up a 4-part series on the cool season grass types, and we talked about essential spring lawn tips every beginner should know. And on our latest episode, we discussed the necessary equipment to take care of your own lawn. Today, we'll be having a conversation about some of the projects that we plan to do in our own lawns and possibly in some other lawns on this spring. Also, if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube, we would really appreciate it if you'd help us reach our goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers this spring, which we are plugging along pretty nicely, and we're happy with that. But if you would be so kind to head over to YouTube, where you can actually see our smiling faces if you don't already see us on there, hit that subscribe button. So really appreciate that. Let's talk some grass and some spring projects. We're just going to kind of be, spitballing back and forth of what we're going to be doing around our houses and maybe some project lawns. So Chris, you want to go first, bud?
Yeah. For once in a while, like I feel like for once in a long time, I'm not going to be doing much in my own yard. I've got perennial ryegrass up front, so that's gonna. I mean, we've talked about it in previous episodes where like we've got some like bare patches that just ultimately are bare patches, and they're not obviously going to come back. So spot seeding and things like that. Once we get warmed up, we just got like a freeze warning on this like thing that I have, and it's like coming out of nowhere. So it's like we're not there yet for like seeding that kind of thing all the way up here. But no, otherwise just your traditional stuff in my yard, dethatching, and just kind of taking her easy on mine. I've got a couple projects. I've got a handful of makeovers that we'll be doing. I've got a shady yard, non-irrigated shady yard, so that should be fun. With dogs and kids. So that's gonna be a project. I've got another one with small dogs, and then doing a bee lawn, which I'm super pumped up about because I've always wanted to get my hand on that just to kind of like see, what it's gonna come out to be in like in the fall. Like if you've ever done like pollinator, type lawns, the blooms always take about 3 or 4 months to get going after you seed and stuff. And just to see like and manage that, and just to see like the differences and how much less maintenance you actually need for something like that. So I'm super pumped up about getting my hands dirty with that project as well. But other than that, it's pretty, I don't know. It's not a lot of project heavy for the spring on my side. How about for you?
Yeah, same. I actually just applied prodiamine to my front yard and side yard because I don't plan to do anything um, this
I did
spring
that
up
with my
there.
back. Yeah.
And yeah, and this time last year, I was dealing with quite a bit of a pretty bad snow mold issue up in the front.
Mm-hmm.
So I did some
Yeah.
seeding there, but like there's nothing this year. It's
No.
came out of winter beautifully. Maybe has a couple little spots that could be touched up, but maybe I'll try to break those up and throw some seed in there. But my main focus is like I do twice a year, the backyard and those dang dog spots, which I'm like so close to just doing a bee lawn back there. Um, I actually reached out to James from Twin City Seed this week, and I was like, dude, are there any cultivars of any kind that are just known to be amazing for dog spots? And he was like, unfortunately, no. If that was the case, we would have a mix. And I was like, yeah,
Right.
I figured. But he said tall fescue is probably your best bet, which is what
For
I've been
sure.
putting in the lawn. So,
About to say you
um,
got that all in the bag, right?
yeah, and that's what I've been applying and overseeding with, and I did my lawn leveling project with mostly tall fescue this time last year, but no back breaking projects, which is probably good because my knees are still killing me and bothering me quite a bit. So um, I have my good days and bad days. So if I don't have to
Are
do
you
too
guys
much,
like are you guys like fully warmed up yet?
mm, if you would asked me this last week, I would have said yes, but like this weekend. So we're currently, it's a Thursday that we're recording this, and we're going to be in the upper 40s and low 50s all this weekend coming up, and kind of ramping up over the next week after that. And I think at that point we're going to be, um, I'd say, kind of in the warmer temperatures, which I hope, because I'd love to get some fertilizer on the lawn in about a week or so, 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and really get things greening up. And you know how the grass sometimes kind of grows uneven this time of year. You got your spots that kind of just don't look great and spots that do look great. So it'd be really awesome to get that nice uniform look back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in my backyard, which is where I'm doing my seeding stuff, which I do literally every spring and every fall because my dogs just destroy it, which we'll touch on a little bit later with one of our Mowtime mailbag questions. But yeah, a lot of spot seeding back there, and then just cussing and swearing all summer long as I watched it slowly die until I seed it again in the fall, and then it'll look good until October, and
There's
then
a solution for that,
yeah, paint or turf or get rid of the dogs. Like, all things I'll mention later.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
trust me, I have solutions. It's just a lot that I'm not willing to do. Um, you know, for a lot of different
No
reasons.
doubt.
But
No doubt. So like we don't have a ton of like projects not per se. A lot of that will come in the fall, and we've obviously talked about that, but talking about what folks should be gearing up for in the spring, right? I think a lot of people and a lot of companies will advertise in the spring because that's like go time for a lot of these. Like you feel like you're behind in the spring, and you're not really, but there are
mhm,
some things to kind of prepare for and just to be mindful of. I think one of them is spring seeding, but some of the other general lawn care tips that you can do in the spring. And if you're not planning on seeding, we've talked about pre-emergence, putting a barricade down, or a dimension down, or something like that. When the green up comes, you can dethatch, do a light dethatch, and I stress really waiting until the green up comes up to get that thatch layer off, just so you're not ripping up any like otherwise dormant grass that would have come back, type of thing, if you do it too early. So we hit a green up. I'm not saying that that's necessarily the right time to do it. I think we're probably a week or so out from doing something like that, but things greened up really quick here after like an inch and a half of rain and some warm temps.
Mm-hmm.
But you really want to wait for that. If you're listening to this towards the end of April, beginning of May, you're probably a little late from a pre-emergent standpoint. But that's not to say that you can't put it down, because not everything germinates all at once, right? Someone told me that, and that was probably a really good tip. Was just not everything pops off when the soil temps hit 55 degrees.
I was actually just doing some research on that, and what I read was actually most of your weeds are going to germinate actually between 60 and 70 degrees ground temperature. So
Hmm.
um, it's not, I mean, I shouldn't say it's never too late. It's obviously you're at points of where you shouldn't just apply it because you want to. But like if you're a little behind schedule, it's still not too late. You're going to still
Yeah.
be able to prevent a lot of those,
Well,
June, July weeds that pop up.
and a
So,
lot. That's a good point too, because a lot of these pre-emergents you'll do in like a split, or they're recommended to do in like a split application too, right? So,
mm-hmm,
um, depending on which one you get. But that being said, yeah, not everything germinates all at once, and weeds are going to pop up for a while. So it's definitely
mm-hmm,
not too late. But you'll definitely want to if you haven't done it, you'll definitely, and you're not seeding and want to tackle some of the weed control in your yard, definitely want to get on it.
mm-hmm.
Um, don't want to wait any longer than maybe you have been, or things like that. But that's certainly my list that I typically go with. In terms of just kind of getting ready for spring. How about on your side, Andrew?
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch on. I actually got a question that isn't part of our Mowtime mailbag series. It was just someone that reached out to me this week, and they said, "Hey, I applied my pre-emergent, and I'm not going to do any seeding because I know that I can't, which is good. Obviously, he knows that he can't seed after pre-emergent, but he said I'm going to core aerate and dethatch my lawn."
Mm,
And I was like, well, you can certainly do that, but just know all that product that you just put on your lawn for your pre-emergent will probably go to waste because you will be beating the
mm-hmm,
crap out of that soil, puncturing holes and dragging stuff along the soil. And how pre-emergents essentially work is they create a vapor barrier for the weeds. Once they start to germinate, they hit that vapor barrier and it basically just kills the plant. So when you disturb the soil, you are now basically negating any kind of properties that pre-emergent had that was working. So
mm-hmm.
I told them, either you just proceed how you want with that, knowing that, or you decide your weed control is a bigger issue. So um, there's just a few things to consider with pre-emergents. They're great, but you kind of have to plan ahead. You can't just like throw them on your lawn because you saw one of us make a video or heard about it's that time of year. It's step one of my fertilizer program or whatever. You kind of have to look ahead a little bit and say, what do I want to do in the next 3 months? Because a product like that affects your lawn literally until midsummer if you do the full application,
Mm-hmm.
and then you shouldn't be seeding probably in the summer. So
Right.
just some little caveats there. Um, some other good things that you, like I just mentioned, you can do in the spring is like dethatching and aerating. That is great to be doing. Open up the soil, get some airflow down in there, some good nutrients, water availability, all that kind of stuff. But it's okay to do pre-emergent after you poke holes in your lawn with aeration and dethatching. Um, just the order of which you do those is important, but um,
For
don't
sure.
be sprinkling any grass seed in there if you plan to apply the pre-emergent as well. Unless you use something like
Mm-hmm.
mesotrione or tenacity, like that triple action from Scott's that has the mesotrione tenacity product in there. So um, as far as stuff like that, and get your sprinklers ready to go here, and
Yeah.
you hopefully don't need them till closer to June, don't irrigate your lawn until you have to. A little bit of um, water scarcity is good for the plant to make it thirsty, right, and dive deeper down, and then you do deep and infrequent watering. So
About to say I haven't turned mine on yet.
neither have I. It's kind of in the books. One of these days I'll do it, and then there's always some some modifications I got to do, some altercations
Mhm.
with the heads and the sprinklers. So that's usually an evening in the middle of the week or something that I go out there and you know find a nice warm evening. It's too cold to be out there. Like I'd freeze my hands off, and
Right.
if I could get them all wet and stuff. So got some time for that. But
Unless you're Vince, in case you don't, and then which you don't have any time because all of the
right.
water that should be going into your lawn is now in your basement. Now that's flooded. So
Yeah, so that is one of the things he's dealing with is some broken pipes with that stem from irrigation actually. So, and
woo!
then he also shared with us today, like he his reel mower took a crap on him today,
Wow, wow,
and,
wow.
and he was planning on doing verticutting and stuff like that. So he's actually kind of the guy that would be probably more interesting to hear, like these spring projects, because he's always doing crazy stuff like
He
that you and
is.
I wouldn't even probably think about
He
because
just
we're
he just did a full. He just completed his first reno.
yeah, he did. Yep.
Um,
So
and like he's Pennsylvania, so he's warmer than we are. But
right.
you brought up seating, and I want to talk on this, and we're probably going to do a full blown episode on it. But I want to talk seating uh, for a couple different reasons because I feel like people experience fool's spring,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the first like fake spring that people like. We've already had this where it
Pseudo spring.
jumps up to pseudo spring where we like jump up to 70 degrees and people are like, yeah, lawns, let's go, right? And it's
Cut
like,
off
yeah,
the
I'm gonna
sleeves on
drop
their
down.
t-shirts. Yeah.
Yeah, which you can still do. You can absolutely, that's appropriate party
I'm
weather.
not condemning it. No.
Yeah, no. Um, but seating when you don't look at the extended forecast and don't look at the overnight lows, for example, I had to like talk people off of a ledge of like
Mhm.
seeding their lawn this past week, and I was like, it's supposed to be 31 degrees on an overnight
Mhm.
low this upcoming Saturday in like 2 days. So we just got to be careful on that. If there's any extended risk of those overnight low temperatures dipping to a point where it's going to be below that freezing point, it's just stay away. It's so
Mhm.
unpredictable. Your grass will be fine. Your seeding project will be fine. Just wait, because otherwise,
Right.
if you do it and then it gets wet and then it freezes, like your seed and investment is toast. You just want to wait until you can actually get the most bang for your buck, which is probably most likely in May. Um, in most years. Now, there's a
Mhm.
whole bunch of risks and unpredictabilities with spring seeding versus fall. It's always best in a cool season environment to do it in the fall because soil temperatures are coming down versus coming up. But that's not to say that you can't do a spring seeding project and be successful. Just set yourself up with expectations. If you're doing bare patches and stuff like that, absolutely you can do it in the spring. If you're doing a full lawn renovation on a bare lawn, you're definitely going to have to touch things up in the fall. Give yourself a good 12 months of a calendar year to fully get to where you probably want to be. So that's just my kind of like 2 or 3 cents on spring seeding that I feel like I always have to remind people of. People get really excited about spring, and as you should. We've been cooped up for a long time, but just want to be really, really careful about when to do it, how you do it, and be mindful of planning and setting yourself up for whatever expectations lie ahead of you, which we'll obviously cover in probably a full blown episode here coming up. But
Right. I think people, including myself, you're like, oh, I'm in that pre-emergent window, the 50, 55 degrees. That's when the grass starts growing. That's when grass seed will start growing.
Mhm.
So if I'm okay to put down pre-emergent, that means I'm also okay to seed. The problem is, like you just said, you got to look at the extended forecast. If you put down pre-emergent, it doesn't matter. Like maybe you
Right,
don't actually need it for 2 weeks. It's not going to work for 2 weeks essentially, and it's just going
insurance
to be
policy.
waste. Yeah, it's an insurance policy, but you're not going to do any damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you want to avoid putting it down too early because then you're just wasting product and it's just going into the soil, and that's just bad for the environment. But when it comes to grass seed, as soon as those babies germinate, like, and you get that
Mm-hmm.
cold snap, you're screwed. So
Screwed.
do your homework, do your due diligence, and look at the forecast because grass seed isn't cheap, even though we got a discount for you, and it's great quality grass seed, but still, it's not going to save it from freezing temperatures and frost. So,
Do you want to
protect.
open up this? You want to open up the mailbag and let's dive into that thing?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So this is our inaugural segment of Mowtime Mailbag, which is
Woo!
questions submitted by you guys, the listeners, the watchers on YouTube, but what have you. So we have a handful of questions that we have gotten over the past couple weeks here, mostly from email, and I think I already have actually added to the form that you fill out on our website to add people's location, because I think location is a huge thing when you talk about grass, right?
Oh,
To
good
kind of
point.
have a better idea of what you're working with and for advice. But all these questions that we've gotten here are pretty, just general, so location doesn't really matter. But this first question is kind of a unique one about a product that some of you may not even know about. This comes from Sean, with a
Hi, Sean.
WNSHAWN. And his question is about hybrid bluegrass. He said, "Can you
Ooh.
guys give your opinion on hybrid bluegrass like the SPF 30 Twin City Seeds sells? I haven't really
Mm.
heard too much about it, and I just wanted to know if there's any downside in comparison to standard Kentucky bluegrass."
That's a great question.
Yeah, I read that and I was like, I'm going to learn something here. We're going to learn together.
So it's from what I understand, it's a new and up and coming cultivar, right? It's from Landmark, and when we talk about a Texas hybrid bluegrass, it's a Texas hybrid. You got Kentucky bluegrass, and it's kind of a smack dab in the middle. So what's really cool about this is it's got all of the bluegrass characteristics with all of, in layman's terms, all of the benefits of like a tall fescue. um you're gonna have you're gonna have really good turf quality. You're gonna have a really active summer. So if you're familiar with characteristics of tall fescue, it's gonna lean towards that. Where you're going to have it thrive more in the summer, whereas like Kentucky bluegrass, a true Kentucky bluegrass will want to go dormant. To my point there, it is very drought tolerant, or the recovery from drought is very quick. If you do experience those conditions, the germination time is much faster than a traditional Kentucky bluegrass. Um, it has deep and aggressive rhizomes, but the one part that tall fescue has a downside for is its vulnerability to like things like brown patch, with this is actually really resistant to. And when you combine the two together, a Kentucky, so the hybrid bluegrass with a tall fescue, it actually benefits the tall fescue and complements that really well. So you're going to start seeing these more, I think, in those types of blends. If we're talking Twin City Seed, probably like things like the Blue Resilience blend, those types of things, putting those mixes together. But overall, from what I understand, there are very little cons to it. And it's a certified seed, like that kind of, it's very high quality in terms of what's coming out there. So if you're interested in those types of things, it's going to carry like the same seeding rate as a Kentucky bluegrass too. You're only going to need about, on an overseeding project, 2 to 3 pounds per 1,000. On a new lawn, 3 to 4 pounds, right? So you're not chucking out 9 to 11 pounds of seed like you otherwise would maybe with a tall fescue on a bare ground. It's way less than that,
Right.
because it can self-repair and do all of those different things. So uh, it Andy from the general sales manager at Twin City Seed actually discussed that in one of our turf grass series, the cool season turf grass episodes, to a certain extent. But if you have any questions on that, certainly give them a call. I know that they're super, super excited about it.
Now, you at one point referred to it as Texas hybrid bluegrass. Is it actually, do you know if it was designed to actually like be a warm season grass like down in Texas? Is that like why it was kind of bred?
I'm
Or is
not
that,
gonna. Yeah, I know.
I'm guessing that's why, like, because it kind of checks out in the warm season zones. That's why Kentucky bluegrass doesn't do well down there. So is this a
Yeah,
way for Kentucky bluegrass to succeed farther south of the transition zone than typical?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend I know the exact origin of it, but I
Sure.
think that's exactly why this kind of came to fruition. And it's one of the probably thousands of, well, not thousands, hundreds of different tests that they, were doing down there, and this one happened to, pop up and
Sure.
perform, and they struck gold type of thing. So
Hmm.
I know for a fact, like I know what I do know is that you can run this farther south than your traditional Kentucky bluegrass into things like transition zones and like down south. Not to say you can do this in like Miami, Florida, but like farther than your traditional
Right.
Kentucky bluegrass will survive annually, right? So
Yeah. Something to
it's
look
pretty
into.
cool.
I'm sure it'll be one of those grasses that we hear more about in the future. Um,
Yeah,
so
no
it sounds
doubt.
pretty neat. All right,
Are
moving on.
you want to read them, or do you want me to?
I'll just go ahead and read them.
Go ahead.
The second one comes from David, and the topic is moss. He said, "I've noticed some heavy moss on the edges of my front yard this winter/spring. I was planning on raking out and reseeding. However, I also have to apply my pre-emergent. Can I apply pre-emergent nearby new germinating seed, or should I periodically apply Moss X over the season and reseed trouble spots in the fall? How would you recommend attacking this? Thank you for any help." So,
What would you do?
um, I think this could go either way, right? I don't think there's a
Hmm.
wrong answer here necessarily. He knows the scenario better than anybody. If I personally had a moss issue in my yard right now, I think I would try to rake it out and reseed um, the best that I can in the spring, and skip the pre-emergent. Um, if the moss is truly that big of an issue, kind of just put the weeds on a back burner, um, and tackle the moss. If you like, if you do, you said raking out the moss. If you run a dethatcher over that moss, it'll tear the crap of it out of it. It'll get most of it out of the grass, most likely. Moss comes up pretty easily. Um, it's not really rooted much at all. So I would recommend hitting it with a dethatcher, getting as much out as you can, trying to dry those areas out. Obviously, there can be multiple reasons why moss could be there in the first place, whether it's a pH issue. But from my personal experience, most people that I have witnessed having moss, including I have a couple spots in my lawn where I get it, it's basically areas where it just doesn't get sunlight. It's
Yeah.
completely shaded. I have areas along my fence line, just how the sun sets, in the direction of it, where it gets like an hour of sunlight a day. It just doesn't dry out. And so I have moss all along those areas. I battled some moss in my front yard before a tree was taken down a couple of years ago, just because of the amount of shade that it gets. It's just one of the things. Growing grass in shade is hard.
Not easy.
So no, and especially when you have just sections of your lawn that are fully shaded because of a tree or some kind of shadow casted on it. So he also asked, can you apply pre-emergent nearby germinating seed? And to that, I would say you're probably fine to do it nearby. Just don't get it too close to that germinating seed. Kind of leave a safe buffer zone. Um, don't put any kind of pre-emergent right up to the area that you want to seed, because um, who knows? From my experience, when you're throwing stuff with the fertilizer spreader, or spraying, things drift farther and go farther than you actually realize they do. Um,
Yep.
Hence why I now use a drop spreader around the garden beds when I'm spreading seed, because I have grass in all of our garden beds and it's a headache. So, um, yeah,
That's general advice. I think just that's
right.
general advice that anybody can take, right? Where
Hmm.
you put pre-emergent down and you want to do some spot seeding. The answer is yes. Yeah, leave that buffer zone and be really careful on calibration settings.
Right. And as far as applying Moss X, he mentions applying Moss X and then reseeding the trouble spots in the fall. Um, that's something you can totally do. It's a judgment call.
Mm-hmm.
If you plan to use Moss X after seeding this spring, like if you decide to do the dethatching and seeding right now, if you feel like you still have a continuing moss issue, just I don't. I've only used Moss X I think once, and it's been a couple of years. So off the top of my head, I do not know how safe it is to seed, like what the seeding window is, or like after seeding. So just make sure you read the label for that and do your homework on making sure that a product like that is safe to apply. You know,
Yep.
either after seeding or before seeding, whatever have you. So,
Right on. Right on. The
all
next,
right.
I'll take the next one. Give you a
Yeah, man.
breather here. The
Sure.
next one is from our friend Riley. He says the subject line is "Move to a new home. Where to start?" Hey guys, looking for some advice. I'm located in southeast Minnesota. What's up, neighbor? I moved here last fall and was only able to mow a couple times before the season was over. I'm wondering where you would start with spring lawn care, having not known the yard. Would you just do a pre-emergent and fertilizer and then take on overseeding in the fall? The previous owner took good care of the lawn and watered it all last summer. Lucky you. I only have a couple low spots that need repair as well. Just trying to see how you would go about planning a new yard to you.
That's a
That
great question.
seems it is a great question. Very common. I know where I would start, and it's for sure a soil test. Any new homeowner should get a soil test. I don't care where you get your soil test. You should know where your lawn is to start. And that will tell you all of it's basically understanding a diagnostic of like your car, right? I've said that a whole bunch of times on previous episodes, but that'll give you your nutrient levels, your pH levels, your CEC levels to know exactly where you are at now, so you have a direction on where to go in the future. But otherwise, that's the starting point. That's where I would go. But we've talked about, I think, a little bit, of what the plan might be in spring earlier in the episode. You know what I mean? So, Andrew, where would you go coming into a brand new house? What's
Well,
your
it sounds like
plan
he's
of
pretty
attack?
fortunate for the lawn he's taken over, to be honest.
For
I think
sure.
he's at a great spot compared to a lot of people that are taking over a serious project lawn. If this lawn is like, you would rate it like a 4 or 5 out of 10, like that's a great start. Good good foundation. Definitely start with the soil test. Um, if you feel like there's no spots in your lawn that need to be addressed immediately with seed, and you're kind of just going to see how your first season goes, which I think is a good way to go about it, just to see how the grass does based on a soil test and the fertilizer that you use all year. Try to push the best growth out of it that you can and get it to fill in. I think proceeding with a pre-emergent would be a good place to go from a soil test. Just you don't know what kind of weed pressure it typically has, because you've never been on that lawn before. So um, if you want to just kind of cover your bases and prevent weeds from coming up, a pre-emergent would be a next great step. And then once you get the soil test results back, maybe designing a fertilizer plan based on your results, given it the nutrients that it needs and the nutrients that it doesn't need, you just withhold those, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like most traditional new homeowners dive immediately into like a 4-step fertilizer program, which is great. It's a great place to start and build from. But that soil test is going to kind of be able to take it to the next level, and especially if like your pH is wrong. I think we've stressed it a lot. It's talking about if your pH is out of whack, you're not going to be able to grow grass. Is your fertilizer utilization is not going to be there, all that kind of stuff. So um, if you need to do some corrections with that, you can work on those season one, right out of the gate, and go from there. And then in the fall, after you've had pretty much a full lawn season, you can look back and go, okay, like I hated these spots in the lawn. It's very clear that these need some work. Maybe you're realizing they're older cultivars in the grass. It doesn't seem like they're new genetics. I want to introduce some new genetics with an overseed. I need to patch repair these spots. And then I think fall would just be a great time to
Mm-hmm.
consider doing that kind of stuff. But just kind of feeling out season one and using, the tools that you have um, for now. But yeah, it sounds like the bare bones of this project or this new lawn are pretty good. So
Yeah, good foundation, no doubt. No doubt.
yeah, anything else there?
No, nothing to add there.
Okay.
No, I think he's in a good spot to get going on that, and then to follow up on that. When you do overseed and do all of those things, our next question comes from Jonathan, talking about or asking about mowing after an overseed project. Hey, just wondering if you guys can go over the topic of mowing during the overseeding process. I see it being asked in Facebook groups all the time, and everybody seems to have a different answer. What is your guys' take? Thank you. What do you think, Andrew?
I actually shot this back to him right away via email, just because people, maybe want some timely answers, and this is going to be a couple weeks before we can get this turned around to them. But what I told him is when I do my overseed projects, I try to wait as long as I can, basically until I mow. It's usually dependent on the current grass, the established grass, growing too high, getting to the point where it needs to be mowed. But ideally, you'd wait. I'd say 3 weeks after seeding. If you have to do it 2 weeks, it's understandable. You don't want that existing tall grass to shade out, all the dirt and the new seed trying to germinate and get established too. But um, I would say, as far as mowing, try to stay off it as long as you can. Just use your best judgment. If you feel like you need to get out there and mow, get out there, bag the clippings, get on and off the lawn. Like take off your striping kit, any kind of weight on there. Um, I think grass is more resilient than we give it credit for, but that doesn't mean you should go on there and, you know, try to have a bunch of traffic out there and stuff and mow regularly. Try to give it a break, and then, you know, the ones you feel like the grass that you've overseeded with is starting to establish, put it on a regular mowing schedule from there.
Mm-hmm. It's about to say I wouldn't be afraid of going out there and mowing if you have to. Keyword there, have
Right.
to. I think if you do have to, historically, what I've done is shut the irrigation off when it's safe to do so, where the seed won't dry off or dry
Mm-hmm.
out. Excuse me. Maybe like I don't know, 5 o'clock at 5 o'clock the day before you plan on mowing or something,
Yeah.
and then letting it dry out enough where your mower is not going to completely just ruin what you just went and did.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Let the
I've totally forgot about like the wet grass aspect of it.
I made the mistake, right? You learn from
Right. Mm-hmm.
them, right? Where it's like I needed to go mow, but it was still soaking wet, and it's just like, well, just went backwards there. Don't do
Tomorrow.
that. Just shut the irrigation off when it's safe to do so. Let it dry out a little bit. Get on there, mow it, get off of it, and turn the irrigation back on, and then you're back at it, and just wait until it's kind of go time again to go out there. I think the other question I get too is how long before I can get into that regular regimented schedule of mowing with brand new grasses too. I think that's a good kind of 1B,
Mm-hmm.
question to this. And it largely will depend, but as long as your new grass babies are, 2-3 inches in height, I think that's probably a good place to take, your first couple mows. Managing it, not just kind of taking the tip off type of thing. There's still grass babies that got to mature properly and all of those different things. But like I said, if you have to mow, do it. But if you can, wait. And it'll obviously depend a lot on what you're seeding with, because germination times vary, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's probably why you see a whole bunch of different answers in the Facebook groups, because there are a whole bunch of different answers. It just kind of depends
Right.
on what you get and what your current situation is. So hopefully that's helpful. But
Yep.
I think we've got one more, Andrew, and it's actually a voice memo. So let's set that up.
Hey guys, love the show. Long time listener, first time caller. Curious if you could expand a little bit on how to repair dog damage and high traffic damage areas coming out of winter. Thanks.
Dogs.
That one strikes a nerve. Yeah.
That one's aimed right
hits-
at you.
Yeah, that was a targeted question, I feel like. Well, being the owner of 2 female dogs that are about 50 pounds, I know this all too well. Let's first start with how to prevent it. Step 1, don't have a dog. Literally, like if you have a dog, just know that if you want to have a nice backyard and you give your dog free reign in the backyard and you kind of make it their territory, that it is going to be an ongoing project constantly, and you're going to be disappointed constantly. It'll look good for weeks at a time, and then it'll just be trashed. If you want to have a dog and you want to have the best results in your lawn, have a male dog, because they kind of lift their leg and kind of spray it everywhere. The females drop it down and condense it all in one small area. And a lot of people think that it's actually the pH of the urine that kills the grass. It has nothing to do with the pH. It's the nitrogen. It's the equivalent of you going out
Yep.
there with a 30-0-0 fertilizer in your hand and dropping a handful in one spot, watering it in, and then that area dies. It's just concentrated nitrogen, and then the outskirts of that dead area are going to look thick and green and lush and grow faster than everything else because it just got free fertilizer from that urine. So that
Kind of
is,
like when you are driving around right about now, listening to this episode, and you can see, kind of the dormant grass, and then there's
Mhm.
yards that are just like circles of dark green grass.
Yep.
They have dogs.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Andrew's talking
Yeah,
about.
and like my backyard, like they're like I mow, and 2 days later, it is so like uneven growth height because these areas around the urine spots are just like 4 inches tall, and everything is back to like 3 inches where I cut it the day before. It just
Yep.
grows like wildfire. I've tried those little chewable things that are safe for dogs. Supposedly, that didn't do anything. I tried dog rocks in the water. Um, the only other thing you can do is try to train your dog to go in certain areas. So if you have mulch areas, if you're fortunate enough that you live butted up to woods and your dog likes to go in the woods, that's a great option. So make sure you get their flea and tick medication up to code. But
Saying that it's telling that to a friend or what?
yeah, just I don't know. Like, if you go out in the woods, there's lots of
Speaking
ticks
from
and stuff.
experience.
Then you're gonna have
Yeah.
other issues on hand. But I love my dogs, but they're a huge pain in the butt. But how do you repair these spots? Or do you have something to say, Chris?
Right. Well, I was about to say, for dogs that tear it up over the winter, right? What do you
Yeah.
do?
So the process of repairing these spots is basically a patch repair like you would do for any kind of area in your lawn where you spot seed, right? For me, I actually use like a pro plugger tool sometimes during the year, and I kind of like um, plug these spots with like 3 inch like grass plugs from other areas of my lawn. So if you have
Mm.
really small spots, you can do that. Like if you have a smaller female dog and maybe it's just a few inches in diameter, that would work great. But these big 50-pound females, like they kill like 10-inch diameter. And I swear one of my dogs, I think, pees like exactly where my other one does. So it's just like twice as bad. So what if you want to try to repair these spots, like as shortly after they're dead, flushing it with water would be
The
good.
grass, not the dog.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So if you want to repair your grass shortly after the grass dies from the urine, it, flushing it with a lot of water is a good idea. Whether you dump some buckets on there, try to wash the the nitrogen that's in that soil like deeper, or kind of get it to spread, and spread out a little bit. Then you're going to want to rake out any of that dead grass that's in there. Usually it's brown, like a dark brown early, then eventually it turns to that crispy, dead grass. Get that dead grass out of there by raking it up. Kind of till it up. I like to use one of those garden weasel cultivators, and just kind of rough up that soil. Another thing that you can do is use a core aerator. Like if you have a handheld, like the ones you step on, those
Mm.
core aerators come in handy. You can punch some holes in there, because what I like to do next is I like to put even just like a 1/2 inch of fresh topsoil down, just to kind of give it a fresh base, give that seed something that's going to be happy in, instead of that piss soaked soil underneath it, if you will. Um, so then you can follow up with your seed, spread that out evenly, get that tamped down nicely in the soil, maybe lightly raked in, and then I like to use peat moss. Not everybody is a huge fan of that. I just like a really thin layer, especially in the spring, because like those summer temps can kick up pretty quick sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
if you're at work all day long, can't keep an eye on if everything's staying wet enough or moist enough, as people say. Um, I like to have just the peace of mind that the the peat moss is holding in that moisture a little bit better than what standard soil would. So I guess rake it out, fresh soil, seed it, cover it with something like peat moss, if you will, and then you're gonna have to water it. However, that looked for you. I have in-ground irrigation, so I run the backyard a few times a day, and I don't even keep my dogs off of it. Um, I did that the first couple of years. I would like fence off areas and section it off and repair it in sections, and I'm like, this is a pain in the butt.
Yeah, pain in
and
the
it's
ass
not
for
and
sure.
it's not fair to my dogs.
No.
That's their territory, and so now I give them full reign. Like I did a full backyard lawn leveling project last year. Did a lot of bare ground seeding. I let the dogs like from day one do what they want. Like if they want to run on it all day long. Like I didn't play with them back there, but they have a dog door 24/7. They have access to that.
Mm-hmm.
So and I had good results. And I just told myself you know, just prepare for a little less, results than maybe you want, but they're getting the freedom that they want. And one more thing is a starter fertilizer of some sort would be good. What I like to do is if you're like spot seeding dog spots, like in my backyard, I'll just put down like a starter fertilizer, like all over my backyard as kind of my spring application.
Mm.
Um, so, yeah, I think that pretty much covers dogs, and I think you know where I stand with them.
Dogs. Well, thanks, Phil, for your question. And for everyone else listening, be sure to send us your questions so we can answer them on our next installment of the Mowtime mailbag by heading to thelawnfeed.com and submitting your question via email, or leave us a nifty voice message that you just heard to be played back on the podcast over the airwaves. So yeah, we'll try to do that as they come in. We'll try to do this every episode, but definitely head over to thelawnfeed.com, submit your question, and we'll get after it.
And on behalf of the entire lawn feed, including Vince, who's fixing broken pipes like Mario and Luigi, thank you for joining us on another episode in the inaugural segment of Mowtime Mailbag. Don't forget to elevate your lawn apparel by grabbing a new Mowtime or Big Grass Guy shirt at thelawnfeed.com and use code BRAD15 at checkout for 15% off your entire order.
Ayo.
Stay safe out there. Good luck with this week's venture of parenthood and your spring projects. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.
Bye-bye.